A woman who has more than one husband will have sexual partners at the same time and has a high chance of acquiring venereal or sexually transmitted diseases, which can also be transmitted back to her husband, even if all of them have no extramarital sex. This is not the case in a man having more than one wife and none of them having extramarital sex. The above reasons are those that one can easily identify. There are probably many more reasons why Allah, in His infinite wisdom, has prohibited polyandry. Now, let's move on to our next question, which is hijab for women. So the question is, why does Islam degrade women by keeping them behind the veil? As you will see as we discuss this question, well, let's just go right into it. The status of women in Islam is often the target of attacks in the secular media. The hijab, or Islamic dress, is cited by many as an example of subjugation of women under Islamic law. Now, before we analyze the reasoning behind the hijab, let's first study the status of women in societies before the advent of Islam. For example, let's look at Babylon. In the past, women were degraded and used as objects of lust. The following examples from history amply illustrate the fact that the status of women in earliest civilizations was very low to the extent that they were denied basic human dignity. So, for instance, like we said, Babylonian civilization. The women were degraded and were denied all rights under Babylonian law. If a man murdered a woman, instead of the man being punished, his wife was put to death. In Greek civilization is considered the most glorious of all ancient civilizations. Now, under this very glorious system, women were deprived of all rights and were looked down upon. In Greek mythology, an imaginary woman named Pandora is the root cause of misfortune of human beings. The Greeks considered women to be subhuman and inferior to men. Though chastity of women was precious and women were held in high esteem, the Greeks were later overwhelmed by ego and sexual perversions. Prostitution became a regular practice among all classes of Greek society. In Roman civilization, when Roman civilization was at the zenith of its glory, a man even had the right to take the life of his wife, and prostitution and nudity were common among the Romans. In Egyptian civilization, Egyptians considered women evil and considered them to be a sign of the devil. And in pre-Islamic Arabia, before Islam spread in Arabia, the Arabs looked down upon women, and very often, when when a female child was born, she was buried alive. Islam uplifts the status of women and granted them their just rights 1400 years ago. Islam expects women to maintain their status. So Islam uplifted women and gave them equality and expects them to maintain that status. Now, hijab for men is the first topic that we'll discuss in this, because people usually only discuss hijab in the context of women. However, in the glorious Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God the Most Exalted, first mentions hijab for men before hijab for women. The glorious Quran says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Say to the believing women that they should lower their gaze. Say to the believing men that they should lower their gaze and guard their modesty. That will make for greater purity for them, and Allah is well acquainted with all that they do. Quran chapter 24, verse 30. The moment a man looks at a woman, and if any brazen or unashamed thought comes to his mind, he should immediately lower his gaze. The next verse says, and say to the believing women that they should lower their gaze and guard their modesty, that they should not display their beauty and ornaments except what must ordinarily appear thereof, that they should draw veils over their bosoms and not display their beauty except to their husbands, their fathers, their husbands' fathers, their sons, and it continues from there. Basically, immediate family, people who are within the family. Quran chapter 24, 31 for a more detailed description on that. Now, there are 6 criteria for hijab. According to Quran and Sunnah, there are, like I said, 6 of these, and we'll discuss these according to Quran and Sunnah. The first would be the extent of the body that should be covered. This is different for men and women. The extent of covering obligatory on the male is to cover the body at least from the navel to the knees. For women, the extent of covering obligatory is to cover the complete body except the face and the hands up to the wrist. If they wish to, they can even cover these parts of the body. Some scholars of Islam insist on the face and hands are part of the obligatory extent of hijab, but that is not amongst all scholars. All the remaining 5 criteria are the same for men and women. The second criteria, the clothes worn should be loose and should not reveal the figure, that is, of men and of women. The clothes worn, number 3, should not be transparent such that one can see through them. Number 4, the clothes worn should not be so glamorous as to attract the opposite sex. Number 5, the clothes worn should not resemble that of the opposite sex. And 6, the clothes worn should not resemble that of the unbelievers. They should not wear clothes that are specifically identities or symbols of the unbelievers' religions, i.e., a Muslim should not be wearing clothing which depicts a cross, or clothing which depicts something in polytheism. That's the word I was looking for. In polytheism. So this is something that is part of hijab. Now, hijab includes conduct and behavior among other things. Complete hijab, besides the 6 criteria of clothing, also includes the moral conduct, behavior, attitude, and intention of the individual. A person only fulfilling the criteria of hijab of the clothes is observing hijab in a limited sense. Hijab of the clothes should be accompanied by hijab of the eyes, hijab of the heart, hijab of the thought, and hijab of intention. It also includes the way a person walks, the way a person talks, the way a person behaves, etc. Hijab, next, prevents molestation. The reason why hijab is prescribed for women is mentioned in Quran in the following verses. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. O Prophet, tell thy wives and daughters and the believing women that they should cast their outer garments over their persons when abroad. That is most convenient that they should be known as such and not molested. And Allah is oft forgiving, most merciful. Quran chapter 33, verse 59. The Quran says that the hijab has been prescribed for the women so that they are recognized as modest women, and this will also prevent them from being molested. Now let's look at an example. Suppose 2 sisters who are twins and who are equally beautiful walk down the street. One of them is attired in the Islamic hijab, i.e., the complete body is covered except for the face and the hands up to the wrist. The other sister is wearing Western clothes, a mini skirt or shorts. Just around the corner, there is a hooligan or ruffian who is waiting for a catch to tease a girl. Whom will he tease? The girl wearing the Islamic hijab or the girl wearing the skirt or the mini? Naturally, he will tease the girl wearing the skirt or the mini. Such dresses are an indirect invitation to the opposite sex for teasing and molestation. The Quran rightly says that hijab prevents women from being molested. Now, capital punishment for rapists. Under the Sharia, a man convicted of having raped a woman is given capital punishment. Many are astonished at this quote-unquote harsh sentence. Some even say that Islam is a ruthless or barbaric religion. Now, Dr. Zakir Naik has asked a simple question to hundreds of non-Muslim men. Suppose, God forbid, someone rapes your wife, your mother, or your sister. You are made the judge, and the rapist is brought in front of you. What punishment would you give him? All of them said they would put him to death. Some even went to the extent of saying they would torture him to death. To them I ask, or to them they were asked, if someone rapes your wife or your mother, you want to put him to death. But if the same crime is committed on somebody else's wife or daughter, you say capital punishment is barbaric. Why should there be double standards? Now, Western society falsely claims to have uplifted women. Now, Western civilization, Western talk of women's liberalizations is nothing but a disguised form of exploitation of her body, degradation of her soul, and deprivation of her honor. Western society claims to have uplifted women. On the contrary, it has actually degraded them to the status of concubines, mistresses, and social butterflies who are mere tools in the hands of pleasure seekers and sex marketers, hidden behind the colorful screen of art and culture. And the USA has some of the highest rates of rape. The United States is supposed to be one of the most advanced countries in the world. It also has one of the highest rates of rape in any country in the world. According to an FBI report in the year 1990, every day on an average, 1,756 cases of rape were committed in the USA alone, daily. Later, another report said that on average, 1,900 cases of rape are committed in the U.S. every day. The year was not mentioned. Maybe it was 92 or 93. Maybe the Americans got bolder in the following years. But let's look at this. Consider a scenario where the Islamic Hijab is followed in America. Whenever a man looks at a woman and any brazen or unashamed thought comes to his mind, he lowers his gaze. Every woman wears the Islamic hijab, which is the complete body cover except for the face and the hands up to the wrist. After this, if any man commits rape, he is given capital punishment. I ask you this, in such a scenario, will the rate of rape in America increase? Will it remain the same? Or will it decrease? Naturally, as soon as Islamic Sharia is implemented, positive results will be inevitable. If Islamic Sharia is implemented in any part of the world, whether it is America or Europe, society will breathe easier. Hijab does not degrade a woman, but uplifts a woman and protects her modesty and chastity. Now, since we've discussed this, and at the end it discusses the implementation of Islamic Sharia, I want to make note that I am not here making a call that we need to make America a nation run on Islamic Sharia. This is simply what I'm trying to express is an instance that in one case, should this instance of Sharia be implemented, what would the outcome be? Now, it is unfeasible to implement Sharia in a non-Islamic nation. I'm simply using this for hypothetical purposes. In the next video, we will discuss, was Islam spread by the sword? Assalamu alaikum. Peace.